Baseball has seen its fair share of controversial moments over the years. But what happened during the recent matchup between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Boston Red Sox has left the entire sport completely speechless. A deliberate and inexcusable cheap shot targeting Shohei Ohtani, delivered by the Red Sox first baseman, has triggered a reaction that nobody in the baseball world was prepared for. And now, in a move that has sent shockwaves from one coast to the other, Ohtani himself is reportedly demanding that the player responsible faces a season-long suspension. The moment the news broke, it became the only story anyone in baseball was talking about. When the Dodgers and Red Sox stepped onto the field that day, everything appeared normal on the surface. The crowd was electric, the stakes were high, and both teams came ready to compete. But beneath that surface, a tension had been building between these two franchises that had been quietly growing for several weeks. Nobody could have predicted that it would explode in the way that it did. And nobody could have predicted that the fallout would reach the level it has now reached, with one of the greatest players in the history of the sport publicly calling for the harshest punishment available to Major League Baseball. What exactly did the Red Sox first baseman do that was so shocking? Why is Ohtani's reaction being described as unprecedented? How has MLB responded to the growing pressure to take action? And what does this mean for the Red Sox player whose career now hangs in a very uncertain balance? Every single answer has only added more fuel to a fire that shows absolutely no signs of going out. From the very beginning of the game, it was clear that the Red Sox had come with a very specific game plan. Their pitcher was working aggressively inside, clearly trying to establish dominance over the Dodgers lineup from the first inning. But it was Ohtani, as it almost always is, who commanded the most attention. Every time the Japanese superstar stepped into the batter's box, the entire stadium seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of something special. Ohtani had already made his presence felt early in the game, drawing a walk and advancing into scoring position with his elite base-running instincts. When he reached first base, the Red Sox first baseman was positioned directly beside him. According to eyewitnesses on the field and reporters covering the game from close range, the interaction between the two players in that moment was already noticeably tense. Several sources revealed afterward that words were exchanged between Ohtani and the Red Sox first baseman while Ohtani stood on the bag, though the exact nature of those words has not been confirmed publicly. What happened next, however, was captured clearly and completely on camera. And what those cameras recorded left absolutely nobody with any doubt about what had taken place. As Ohtani took his lead off first base, preparing to react to the next pitch, the Red Sox first baseman made a move that had nothing to do with baseball. In a moment that lasted only a fraction of a second but felt much longer to everyone watching, the Red Sox player delivered a sharp and deliberate elbow directly into Ohtani's ribs. It was not accidental. It was not incidental contact. It was a calculated, intentional cheap shot targeting one of the most valuable and celebrated players in the sport today. Ohtani visibly reacted to the contact, turning immediately toward the Red Sox first baseman with an expression that made it absolutely clear he understood exactly what had just happened. Players nearby on the field noticed the interaction instantly. The home plate umpire, who had been focused on the pitch, was alerted by the first base umpire, who had seen the entire sequence of events unfold from just a few feet away. Within moments, both dugouts began to empty. Coaches and players streamed onto the field as the situation threatened to escalate rapidly. Dodgers players who had seen what happened were furious, and several of them had to be physically restrained from confronting the Red Sox first baseman directly. The atmosphere inside the stadium, which had been electric with excitement just minutes earlier, shifted in an instant to something far more tense and uncomfortable. Mookie Betts said afterward that when he saw what happened to Ohtani, something inside him snapped. He said that you can compete hard, you can play with intensity, and you can do everything in your power to win a baseball game. But what that Red Sox player did had nothing to do with competing. It was a cheap shot, plain and simple, and every single person on that field knew it. The umpires gathered immediately to discuss what had been witnessed and reported. After a brief but serious conversation, the first base umpire confirmed what many had already suspected. The Red Sox first baseman was officially ejected from the game. The decision was met with an enormous roar from the crowd, with Dodgers fans erupting in approval and Red Sox supporters expressing their frustration loudly from the stands. The Red Sox first baseman argued aggressively against the ejection, insisting that the contact had been accidental and that the umpires were overreacting. His manager came out of the dugout to support his player's argument, but the umpires were unmoved. The call stood, the ejection was confirmed, and the Red Sox player walked off the field to a stadium full of noise and controversy. Sources close to the umpiring crew revealed afterward that the decision had been straightforward. The first base umpire had a completely clear line of sight to the incident and had seen without any ambiguity that the contact was deliberate. According to reports, the crew chief described the play as one of the most blatant examples of intentional unsportsmanlike conduct he had witnessed in his many years of officiating at the major league level. There was simply no other call that could have been made. But the ejection was only the beginning. Because what happened after the game took the story to an entirely different level. In a development that stunned even the most experienced voices in the baseball world, it was reported that Shohei Ohtani had made his feelings about the situation known in the clearest possible terms. According to sources with direct knowledge of the conversations that took place within the Dodgers organization following the game, Ohtani was not satisfied with a simple ejection. He was demanding far more serious consequences. Reports confirmed that Ohtani, through the appropriate channels within the Dodgers organization, had formally communicated his belief that the Red Sox first baseman deserved a season-long suspension for what he had done. This was not a casual complaint or an emotional reaction made in the heat of the moment. This was a deliberate and considered position taken by one of the sport's biggest stars, and the fact that Ohtani was willing to speak up so directly and so forcefully immediately elevated the story to a level that MLB could not ignore. Manager Dave Roberts addressed the media after the game with a level of seriousness that made it immediately clear how gravely the organization was treating the situation. Roberts said that what happened on that field today was not acceptable under any circumstances. He said that his player had been targeted deliberately, that the act had been captured on camera for everyone to see, and that the Dodgers fully expected Major League Baseball to respond with consequences that matched the severity of what had occurred. Roberts confirmed that the organization was in direct communication with MLB officials and that they were pushing strongly for the maximum possible punishment. He said that protecting the safety and integrity of the game was not something the Dodgers were willing to compromise on and that they would continue to make their position absolutely clear until appropriate action was taken. Andrew Friedman, the Dodgers' president of baseball operations, issued a formal statement that left no room for misinterpretation. He said that the Dodgers organization condemned the actions of the Red Sox first baseman in the strongest possible terms. He said that Shohei Ohtani is not only the face of this franchise but one of the most important figures in the entire sport, and that any deliberate attempt to harm him physically would be treated with the utmost seriousness. Friedman made it clear that the organization stood fully behind Ohtani's call for a season-long suspension and that they would pursue every available avenue to ensure justice was served. The reaction from the rest of the baseball world was immediate and overwhelming. Former players, Hall of Famers, analysts, and commentators across every platform spoke with a unified voice, condemning the cheap shot and expressing strong support for Ohtani's demand for a serious suspension. Several prominent voices in the sport described the incident as one of the most disturbing they had ever witnessed, and many argued that anything less than a lengthy suspension would send completely the wrong message to every player in the league. Social media erupted within minutes of the story breaking. The clip of the incident was viewed tens of millions of times across every major platform, and the outrage expressed by fans from around the world was unlike anything the baseball community had seen in recent memory. The hashtag calling for the Red Sox player's suspension trended at the top of every major platform for hours, reflecting just how deeply the incident had resonated with people far beyond the world of baseball. Inside the Dodgers clubhouse after the game, Ohtani sat quietly and spoke to reporters with the calm and measured composure that has always defined him. But behind that calm exterior, those who know him well said they could sense something different. This was not a player who was simply moving on. This was a player who had been genuinely affected by what had happened and who was determined to make sure it never happened again. Ohtani said simply that he respected the game of baseball deeply and that he expected everyone who played it to do the same. He said that what happened today did not reflect the values of the sport he loved, and that he hoped the appropriate people would take the necessary steps to make sure something like this was never repeated. Those words, quiet and composed as they were, carried more weight than anything else said that day. Because when Shohei Ohtani speaks, the entire baseball world listens. And right now, the entire baseball world is waiting to see what happens next. Thank you for watching. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Subscribe to our channel for more interesting and up-to-date information.